Rolling in. Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Lisa Senecal. I am here as I always am on Thursday mornings with David Pepper. Good morning, David.
Good morning. How's it going?
Great. Great. We have some interesting stuff going on this week. First, I want to mention David is the author of the Perspectives newsletter on Substack. Please do read it, subscribe to it. Not only is it incredibly informative and incisive, but you very often come away with a better understanding of the gains that we're making and what we can do to continue making them, which we all need to stay focused on, because there actually is good and interesting stuff happening.
There is.
So in that vein, let's start by talking about what is going on with the Texas redistricting case, because there was a lawsuit filed. It has now been heard. Yeah, what is not just heard, but there's been a ruling.
Right.
That of course is immediately being appealed. But go ahead and explain to everybody where we are on Texas redistricting.
It really is the craziest set of circumstances. One, the judge who wrote the opinion striking it down as a Trump appointee, who previously was on the Texas Supreme Court and once clerked for Greg Abbott. Okay. Wow. And he's the one who struck it down. And he's clearly a conservative. He joins with an Obama judge and appointee, and then a Reagan appointee didn't like it. So that already is like, what is going on in this case? And it's a very interesting case, and it will end up being a real sort of maybe this isn't the right term, but a character test of the U.S. Supreme Court. Because what happened here is basically the way the law works, and this also illustrates how screwed up the law is around gerrymandering. So basically the Supreme Court of the United States has basically said, if you want to gerrymander for partisan political reasons, you can do whatever you want, as long as it's based on partisan reasons.
Which is stupid in the first place.
It's crazy, okay? And so, but it basically, Ohio, as long as there's not a racial component to the gerrymander, and all you do is say, yes, we're just partisan hacks. We just are going to be partisan, and we want to have a 12-2 district map. The court says, not only is that okay, but we won't even hear such cases. So the one thing you should not do if you want to avoid a court challenge is make this about dividing up people on racial lines. No one is more clear about that being a problem. And this is why this Louisiana case is actually a risk in this term, because the Thomas and Roberts and the others are so concerned about race being an element in districting, they don't even want you to use race to overcome discriminatory maps. Okay, that's the Louisiana case. In this case, and this is why the lead paragraph of the opinion is quoting Justice Roberts saying, just as long as you don't use race to draw districts, either a discriminatory way or remedial way, you're fine. What happened here is exactly that. And it happened this way, and we're going to talk about this throughout today, like complete incompetence. So basically, the hearings in this case basically brought out that the DOJ under Pam Bondi and their new civil rights person, who is the opposite of a civil rights person, were basically colluding with Greg Abbott. Like, send us a memo demanding that we change the districts so we in Texas then have an excuse to change the districts. That's what was brought out in the hearing, the 9-day trial. The problem is the memo described everything in racial terms. So they described it in the exact way the Supreme Court said, if you had written a memo saying, hey,
just one thing.
Yeah, be partisan hacks. Like, we don't care. We won't even hear the case. The one thing a lawyer should know is don't ground the districts, again, either on the front end in a negative way or even a remedial way, as being about drawing lines using race data as the sort of criteria, and you're fine. And what the court is saying is that's exactly what they did. And the evidence that they did it is not only sort of, and by the way, a bunch of the Texas Republicans are now saying the get out of jail free card, oh, we were just being partisan. We just wanted more districts. But again, this shows you how stupid the overall approach is. But what the court said is, but your memo from the DOJ that started all of this said it was all about race. And that is why the court said, Justice Thomas, Justice Roberts, Justice Alito, they violated the thing that you have told us they should not be doing, and therefore we strike it down. And that's why the appeal is so interesting, because if again, the Louisiana case that they already heard about, Justice Roberts and the others have been all about how race should not be part of it. And so the appeal is kind of calling them out. If they are consistent with what they have been saying for years, they should not reverse this decision. This is there's some risk here for the more progressive view, by the way, that the Supreme Court now is so against race being used that they don't even think it should be used, some of them, to remediate against discrimination. It's sort of like the anti-affirmative action position. But this case really calls out the Supreme Court of, hey, if you mean what you said and what you've written, then this Texas map is clearly illegal. And so so that's the opinion, and it's a combination of this bizarre setup of the gerrymandering doctrine, but also complete incompetence that they made the redrawing all about race, when, as we've been saying, that's kind of the one thing you shouldn't do. My law students know this now. When we teach this, the one thing you wouldn't want to do with gerrymandering is make it all about using racial data to draw the districts. And this court found that that's exactly what they did.
Now, the Supreme Court doesn't have to take up this case. They could decide not to hear it, which it seems like one of the only ways that they can get out of this without having the conservative majority needing to rule against themselves and what they've been pushing forward. Because there is no, well, I was going to say there isn't any other way that they could come up with a decision that ends up reinstating this redistricting. But that's not true, because we know the insane, convoluted, totally illogical, nonsensical stuff that conservatives on the court have come up with to justify their rulings, that decisions, when you read them, it makes your brain hurt, because they don't make any sense. So they can find a way to do this if they want to, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what you were just saying, David. It's not that the court has said, we don't want redistricting like Texas is doing based on race.
Right.
They're saying which would take seats away from potentially more racially representative districts. What the court has been saying is, we don't want to look at any of the gerrymandering that's gone on that potentially is about race, that has denied representation to people of color.
Right.
Now it's just coming back to bite them in the ass, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, they basically said it should be race blind. Even again, the big Louisiana case, and I know this is making all of our brains hurt. The Louisiana case that there was an argument for a couple weeks ago, the Louisiana process was found to be discriminatory. Okay. And the challenge now is that to overcome that discrimination, Louisiana used race to remediate, which kind of makes sense if the problem was originally they had discriminated. The Supreme Court is saying we must be so race blind, you can't even use racial data to remediate against discrimination. And this is a case where it looks like Texas was using racial data throughout to draw these districts, prompted by the DOJ, which told them to do so. The bottom line is, and I have stopped holding my breath for the Supreme Court to do the right thing. They could do one of these shadow docket things where we get an order that overturns. So the key is, does the court hold up the stay? The stay is everything. Does the court overturn the stay and let the currently illegal map happen, which they've done before, or do they uphold the stay and have the old map happen? Do they have an oral argument on an emergency basis? One of the things this court has done, I've written about this before, is sometimes delay is the best friend of those breaking the law. A couple of years ago, a North Carolina gerrymander was saved. A Republican gerrymander was saved because the court took a case and took 6 months to decide it. This was sort of like the disqualification stuff, or immunity stuff. It took 6 months to decide it, and by the time they made the decision, it was too late. In a gerrymandered Republican map that the North Carolina Supreme Court had struck down was allowed to happen. So there are a lot of things they could do. They could even rule in the end that this lower court is right, but if they if they reverse the stay and then drag out the oral arguments, it could be too late for this election. So they've done a lot of those games. Delay has been something they've used. The shadow docket, the not allowing a map a couple years ago, which they did in multiple states, to move forward, even though the lower court had deemed it illegal. These are all things that do help. And my worry is, I would guess that well over 50-50 odds are that we're going to see something like that, as opposed to, okay, map's illegal, we uphold the stay, go and have the elections pre this gerrymandered rig map. But it does really point out, and it really points out it could potentially point out, by the way, the complete inconsistency of the U.S. Supreme Court. But it also points out just how screwed up it is that we have, if it's partisan gerrymandering, whatever you want to do is fine. You don't even get to go to court. And then here, but racial gerrymandering, they still sort of act upon, even if it's to remediate discrimination. It's real. I try and teach this to my law students and hope they'll still want to be lawyers, because it's so, as people are saying, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's the idea that right now Greg Abbott and others in Texas are saying, "Oh no, we were simply trying to be super partisan. That's the get out of jail free card in these cases." That shouldn't be how it works.
Yeah,
but that's what they've set up.
The get out of jail free card being that we are trying to deny representative government for this reason, not that reason, and that either one could be legal in a democracy.
Yes.
But part of this is the ineptitude.
Right.
That you were pointing out that between the DOJ and Greg Abbott, that they were making race so obviously the argument for why they needed to gerrymander these districts. The incompetence is widespread. It is not limited to this case. So, let's go on to talking about, I guess, the Comey case, which is in the news in a big way because it has just been heard. Well, so there are several different arguments being made right now for why this case should be tossed.
Yeah.
And if that does happen, I think there are 3 different reasons that they've asked for the case to be thrown out. If it is, they waited so long to get this indictment that the statute of limitations has now run out, so they can't refile if this ends up getting tossed out. But can you explain a little bit where incompetence has come in to this case as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was, and by the way, this is a very different level, but I was on a grand jury once. Actually, anyone here, if you ever call to either grand jury or jury duty, and please do it, you'll learn a ton. The idea that what they did was they brought forward the indictment. Apparently, the final indictment was only approved by the 4-person and didn't go to the entire grand jury, which I can't imagine isn't going to lead to it being tossed. So they're doing briefings on that. But I think what we are seeing, Trump from the first term, he got tired of the people who insisted on doing things the right way. We don't indict unless we're likely to succeed in the prosecution. You can't do that, Mr. President. That's illegal or unethical. He didn't want any of those people. He wanted yes people. He wanted, and unfortunately in the law, yes people are often going to be incompetent people, because the competent people who take an oath as a lawyer to the Constitution, to the ethics of law, are going to continue to serve that oath, and not just Trump. So I do think that he's surrounding himself with people who are going to keep screwing up, and they clearly screwed up the Texas case. Maybe the Supreme Court saves them that screw up. And in this case, clearly, this all came about because and I've written about this. They want show trials. They that's what they really want. They want show trials.
Very authoritarian.
And to get a show trial, you have to be able to indict, even if you ultimately don't think you can win the prosecution. They want to embarrass people. They want to cost them money. The process of the investigation for them is the win. So it's not surprising that they're skipping that indictment process. They're firing people who won't indict under the old DOJ rules. Because in the end, if someone gets convicted, they love it. But kind of like a Putin-style autocracy, it's the visual of the show trial that Trump values. Remember when he was on that phone call with Zelensky, he didn't say, "I want you to like prosecute or convict Joe Biden or Hunter Biden." He said, "I want you to start an investigation."
Yeah.
And so they've it's about the process, and that's what he wanted from Raffensperger too. Investigate. They want the long, grinding process of a public trial, and they think they win either way. So they've lowered all these standards. They put in incompetent, unethical people who go along with this different approach. And so again and again and again, they're going to keep screwing up. I mean, they can't they can't convict people for the smallest things. And a lot of grand juries are saying no. And maybe that's here why they had to skip the normal process and just get it to a 4-person. But yeah, I think we're going to see more of this. And I do think the American people, for the most part, see through it when you start to see these repeated kind of bizarre, inept things that don't feel like our justice system that we've sort of lived with for years.
Yeah, and because grand jury indictments, people understand how easy these are to get because we have you can get an indictment for a ham sandwich,
Right.
at which the sandwich guy did get indicted
Right.
and then was not found liable or guilty or whatever. He was charged with assault. But Lindsay Halligan, who is the attorney that was representing the government in this case, the other thing, she's never been before a grand jury before.
Right.
She is not a prosecutor. She has no idea what she's doing. So even if potentially down the road she could have become a competent prosecutor, she's never done it. So the likelihood you are going to screw something up if you don't have people around you who are making sure that everything you file and everything you say is within what the procedure needs to be. She couldn't even get the instructions for the grand jury right. She
Right.
she fumbled what the law was
Right.
when she got the indictment against Comey. So they just create and then you've got everything that Trump said publicly and put in writing on social media about I want I want you to go after Comey. That clearly this is clearly to us, and we'll see if it's clear to a court that it is a malicious prosecution. So there's so many grounds that they create by this incompetence for getting things thrown out. Hopefully, one is enough in this case, but and maybe it has, probably won't, but possible deterrent effect the next time they'll at least be a little bit more careful the next time they're indicting someone. So maybe it'll be more difficult to get the indictment. And then we have the Epstein bill that Trump now fully supports, but and there's a lot of excitement around this, and the Justice Department has 30 days now to turn over the documents, but there are loopholes in this legislation that you can drive a truck through, including anything that is part of an ongoing investigation gets to be held back.
Right.
And we have to trust the Trump Department of Justice to decide which of those documents might be part of an ongoing investigation and they won't release. So what's your hope that we actually see the meaningful portion of.
Yeah, I mean, someone told me this. I was with a number of first year Congress people, first term, and they always said that they thought the biggest reason they put the House out of session all this time was less fear about that they actually would release things, which I'm confident for the last 6 months, every day they've been plotting and scheming how to eliminate documents, black out every single thing that would be a problem. Like they clearly been doing that the whole time. We know that around the Kavanaugh investigation, they took an investigation and turned it into the opposite. They were always worried, I was told, and I think this was good wisdom, that they were mainly worried about a bunch of Republicans demanding accountability. That the optics of Trump losing his base was the bigger worry while they were, screwing up all the documents. And I think in the end, Trump saying, I give you permission to vote this way was a concession that they had lost that political battle. And so I think it is important to see, and we can talk about this in other ways too, that in the end, there was 100 plus Republicans in Congress who would have voted to release once it got through the 218. And so as a political matter, it was a real, defeat. But do I sit around and have hope that we're going to, no, by the way, it is the same Pam Bondi DOJ that screwed up Texas and the Comey case. So could there be all sorts of ineptness and illegalities in the way they're covering things up that come out? My guess is there will be. But we're going to have to rely on a lot of other things if this is going to come out. Listening to the victims, believing the victims, they have been sort of right every step of the way. Other potential emails that come out, but no, I don't think this is going to lead to some big slew of documents. It's helpful because I think for 6 months that they've obviously been scheming to from the very beginning. I mean, from the very beginning of the summer, it was clear. No, Trump had been told by Bondi or someone, you're all over these things, and they've used all this time to obviously minimize it. But they're inept enough. My guess is things will come out that won't be good, but it won't. It certainly would not come out in the appropriate way that you would expect. So we'll see in the end. But he did lose, and this. I mean, I know I've talked about this before, and I don't want to get carried away with this, but he lost the Republicans on this issue. I mean, they were going to vote way more than
And
218.
Mike Johnson totally lost control
Yes.
of the House.
So politically, and this is what we're seeing around the country right now. We are seeing infighting. We are seeing questioning. Do we still want to be stuck with this guy? And another example of this was, again, I know we brought it before, the Indiana gerrymandering. That involved 2 congressional seats, but it was much bigger. A fully Republican state, fully Republican, a gerrymandered Republican legislature, under the full pressure of the White House and Vance and Trump, we're going to primary all of you. Not only refused to gerrymander because they couldn't get enough Republican votes, a few days ago, the governor, after talking to Trump, said, we're going to have another special session. And that same Indiana Senate said, we'll see you in January. We're not having it. And it's to me like a Republican state, like one of the more red states, to stand up. It's kind of like the Epstein stuff and say, we're not doing it. We care more what Mike Pence and Mitch Daniels are saying to us about how we shouldn't do it than Trump and Vance. So I do think the overall votes that Trump had to basically I was saying it's like sort of me saying, I gave Michael Jordan permission to dunk on me. Like he was going to dunk on me anyway. That's kind of what Trump did. Oh, you can all vote for it. They were going to vote for it. That was him knowing that. But I do think when you look around at a lot of, Ted Cruz sort of talking about running for president, that undermines Trump. You got, again, the Indiana example. I do think you're seeing like the sort of breaks in the glass around MAGA and people more and more open and willing to do it. And I think Trump there lost that political battle when he had to say, okay, you guys can all vote for it. I'm letting you do that.
Well, if there's one thing that all politicians can do, it's read polls. And the latest one for Trump is it just keeps getting worse. The Republicans and Trump are saddled with the shutdown that clearly ended up being overwhelmingly attributed to them. The harm in having the government reopen without taking care of these healthcare subsidies is going to be around the necks of the Republicans. And Trump's at now 38% approval, and he's at 26% approval on handling everyday expenses, the affordability question. So, I mean, if people running for office need to locate their spines, these sort of numbers really help them see a little bit more clearly where they might have put those down, and they can pick them back up, because this is not a president with coattails. He might be able to get you primaried, but even in the primaries, his ability to destroy the more moderate candidate, and I can't even believe I at this point think that there are a lot of moderates left in the Republican Party who are in office, but there are worse people out there who will step up if the president asks them to. But man, he's just going to be a weight around candidates' necks.
One of the more respected columnists in Ohio just wrote that this morning, that we're seeing that in recent polls. And I think it'll be interesting. They are still so scared of him. I think it will take some time before they go as far as, let's say, those Indiana Republican senators did. But it really is a problem. And they're still in some kind of denial. I mean, I saw an interview with this Treasury Secretary who still is saying everything's great. Trump is clearly saying, and he hasn't changed his stance that I don't want to hear about affordability. It's fake news. And the other one is, I really do think they seem to have themselves geared up to not, we'll see what happens, but to not extend the subsidies, but to basically destroy the ACA. Their new goal is to relive the 2018 battle overall, and to reframe the Affordable Care Act in different ways to try and make it unpopular. I just think that's, again, inviting disaster for them.
They're back to proposing health savings accounts as an alternative to health insurance, which, that might work for people who have extra money lying around that they can put into an HSA. But for people who cannot afford to pay out of pocket for all of their medical costs or any of their medical costs, if you can't afford if you're making decisions every month between your electric bill and your prescription medication that keeps you alive, that your ability to put money aside in a health savings account to pay for your medical expenses is ridiculous. And that one it's not hard to understand, right? The average person gets, I don't have money to put in a savings account, whether it's for healthcare or anything else. I don't contribute to a savings account. Trump doesn't seem to understand that, because he thinks everybody has 401ks that are going to
and I mean, Democrats literally, in a way, have raised the issue in a way that if Republicans were smart, Democrats will have saved their political hide by not allowing these costs to explode. And they've been consistent. And I think the Republicans see that. And the only thing that would justify not doing that is that their alternative is just to destroy the ACA, try and blame it on Obama, say it was always bad. They're kind of saying that that's just not going to work. I mean, that is like literally like the third iceberg the Titanic will hit, and the biggest one maybe even than the cost issue if they go forward, because the costs will go up, and then they'll spend all of next year defending getting rid of the ACA. I mean, that's a disaster for them. But they seem pretty committed to that path. It's nuts, but politically and policy-wise, but that seems to be what they're doing, and I think that's coming straight from the top.
Well, we'll see if they could get the votes for that in the Senate. That's going to be tough to get enough people who are in vulnerable seats to go along with that.
But the thing is, that mindset is why they won't extend the subsidies. So even if they don't have an affirmative vote for some new, like, what concept, they it's why in their mind they can justify not extending the subsidies, which is going to be what turns a bill, double, triple, quadruple, or 10 times the amount people are paying now is what they'll pay next year, which again is for them just terrible, terrible.
It's awful, and it's awful on a
Yeah, it's
human
awful
level.
for the individuals it's
Yep.
terrible politics, but I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I did some listening sessions in very rural Ohio, and you can just feel it's not only right on the edge, it's over, food banks being, long lines, health costs, it's already seeping into the system. I mean, we are really at a combination. You see the job numbers, a negative month just a month ago. Some of the numbers are as bad as the Great Recession. I mean, it's all coming together at once, and they are literally making it worse. I mean, they are taking steps that make it worse. And so it's bad politically for them, but that's secondary. It's bad. It's just bad for Americans, and I worry that we are falling into that. And they're hiding the data, so it's not on the data. But I can tell you from being out there, people are feeling it in all the different ways.
Yeah, we know that they've been, Trump wants to reinvent the way all data is looked at and released so that the numbers look better than they are, but people know what they're living. They
Yeah.
they know what their personal experience is, and the worst thing you can do to someone who is really struggling economically, financially, is to tell them that they're fine and that they aren't
Yeah.
experiencing any of those hardships. So, yeah, good luck with convincing people that rosy numbers mean something. I'm pretty sure we saw this in 24 not play out well for the Democrats. So I don't expect it's going to work better for the Republicans when things actually are much worse.
Yeah.
Which is why everybody, all of you listening to this, your voice is out there, the conversations that you're having with people, the way everyone is doing their part to educate people on what's really going on, it is working. All of this doesn't just happen. It happens because there is greater awareness being built, and that's because everybody's talking about it. So thank you to everybody who's watching, who's doing your piece to make sure that we have a more educated electorate and that people are taking the actions that they can when there are phone calls to be made or letters to be written or emails to be sent that people are, or town halls to show up for, that people are doing it. So thank you, David. Thank you, everybody.
Can I just say one thing in closing, because I want to share it? So I went to an amazing event the other evening in D.C. I'm part of the Kettering Foundation, and actually James Comey was there, and I think he knew some of what was coming. But one of the people that we were honoring was Alexei Navalny, and his widow was there. She is still pushing forward on what he said. And Ruth Ben-Ghiat. She was interviewing Yulia Navalny is her
That
name.
must have been an incredible
It was amazing. It was amazing. But one of the things she said, and I'll just close with this. She said, "How did your husband keep going?" And she said, and I love this. Oh, he was very smart. He was very committed, but he was also very funny. He was funny. He was joyous. He was optimistic. And she said, and that side of him is not only kept him going, but it drew other people to him because he didn't seem, and we can all fall into the being too somber and pessimistic. And I worry that in Ohio, I hear he's self-defeating all the time. But what she described was someone who faced more danger than any of us do, and he maintained sort of a joy about it. And you could see it in some of his videos, like he had a wicked sense of humor. And it just left me thinking, like, all of us, not only do we need to keep going, but still find joy in life. Like, know that humor sometimes may get. That's why I love all the signs at these rallies. Some of them are darn funny.
So good.
And I feel like what she was saying was that common touch he had of being able to do that is one reason why, versus other politicians, people really wanted to join what he was doing because there was a common sort of humanity about it that came through in humor and joy and optimism. So I just think that's something all of us, as we go into a very serious year with a lot of serious issues, that keeping that sort of joy part and try to find some things that make all the activity and all the new people we are meeting also make it a little fun at times. I think that if Navalny could do that with what he was facing and it worked for him as she described, that's a good reminder for all of us. I certainly took that to heart as I left.
Yeah, that's such an important message, David. We know one of the tactics of authoritarian and fascist movements is to suck the joy out of the opposition and replace it with despair
Yeah,
and then disengagement. And we're not going to let that happen because there is too much to be hopeful about, and there are too many places to find joy,
yeah.
and build on it. So, thank you, David.
Thanks.
I
Take
love
care, everybody.
conversations.
Keep
Thanks,
going.
everybody. We will see you. Next week is Thanksgiving. We might not see you. So
Okay.
happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We might be on a different day, so keep a lookout for that. But yeah, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and you too, David.
Take care. You as well. See ya.
Bye bye.